Welcome to the Everyone is a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl.
I'm 37?
With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick.
I am the smart. I am the smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
And Josh Adams.
Stick around.
Visit us at IHateCritics.net. We're also on everyoneIsACriticPodcast.com. We have a Facebook page, Everyone is a Critic. Our Twitter handle and Instagram handle is E1IsACritic. There you can check out our top fives, watch the trailers, read Sean's reviews, watch any news Josh posts, which we'll get to in a little bit. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Subscribe to the podcast and rate and review the show. We're now, instead of being the number 3 movie review podcast, we're back to 4. Those bourbon guys got back ahead of us. I don't know if they even know about our rivalry. So share the podcast with your friends. We would like to grow the audience. Get them to like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, all that good stuff. And subscribe to the show and then rate and review it. We'll read the review on the air and it will help us move up the charts. But the very best way to help us out is Patreon. If you head over to IHateCritics.net/Patreon, that's the best way to help us out. You'll become a supporter of the show. It gives us a little money and then we can kind of grow the show with video and books and other things we have in the works. But before we get into the meat of the show, I guess we can start out with our trailers. We had Phantom Thread. Is that what it's called?
Phantom Thread, yes. Paul Thomas Anderson with what is supposed to be the final movie of Daniel Day-Lewis. And boy, does this look amazing! I don't know about the story or the characters yet, but the look of it is incredible.
Yeah, I'll see anything he does because there will be blood, and that's really what I base this off of, is just that, because that performance to me was, I'll go to that, like a top 10, just watch it so you can watch somebody act. There's criticism of him for overacting, of course, and staying in character throughout the production. And I understand the problems with that, and making an announcement that you're retiring and this is going to be your final film is slightly pretentious, and because some actors have been retired now for 20 years, like Anthony Hopkins.
And hasn't he said that before?
I don't know if he said it before, but a lot of people say that and then they're back. And okay, if it's your final film, fine, but why? It just adds a level of pretension to it that I don't need. But Paul Thomas Anderson, everything that he does, I'm interested in too. When this comes out, I'm hoping to revisit some of his stuff, like Magnolia, like Inherent Vice, which I haven't seen since the theater. Boogie Nights would be a good one for me to watch that week, too. Just everything that he does has a lot of good stuff in it.
Did you hear about what Mark Wahlberg said about Boogie Nights?
That he had to apologize to God for showing
He hopes God forgives him
That's what
for
it is.
Boogie Nights.
Yeah. Huh. And I was like, what part? The part where you were putting a prosthetic dick out on the counter or what?
Probably.
Apologize to God for Wahlburgers.
How about that time you beat up a guy over a race? How about that when you were a kid? Oh, hang on. Whoa, sorry.
I'm sure he's apologetic for that as well.
Apologized to him for the music video for Good Vibrations.
God will never forgive him for that.
Should apologize for the Transformer movie.
That too. Oh my gosh, he has so much to atone for. He's so busy on Sundays.
He's been hanging out with Mel Gibson too much.
Yes, he has.
Yeah, I mean, for this trailer, I don't know. I with both of them, I'm always like hypercritical of every wrong move, so I don't know if I'm the best person. Like Daniel Day-Lewis bothers me, and I'm watching this thinking, God, I hope Denzel Washington kicks his ass at the Academy Awards. Because every time I see that trailer for Roman J. Israel, I like it more.
Yeah.
Really? I still have a hard time with it.
I'm with you. It was playing before Jigsaw, and I said, man, even though the trailer changes tones, it's like, whew, it's really something else. It's like a performance you just are gravitating towards.
Yeah, it's the Tom Cruise thing. I've been waiting for this from Denzel for a while.
Yeah.
Den of Thieves.
Oh, it's Gerard Butler. It's going to suck. Next.
Well, to me, it was like, is this like Heat with
you're not the only
Gerard
one.
Butler and 50 Cent
Yes.
playing Al Pacino and Robert De Niro?
That's what somebody else said too. You're not wrong in thinking that. But yeah, it's going to be like sea level Heat. You know, when this comes
I already
out,
don't like Heat.
Heat's already B-level movie.
sure. Well, wait. Oh, I don't know about that. When it comes out, maybe we should pit them against each other and see which one Sean likes best.
Well, that's no contest.
It'll definitely be the classic that week.
But wouldn't it be hilarious though if somehow he liked the Gerard Butler movie more than that one?
No way.
No chance. Gerard Butler's terrible. He's terrible in the trailer. I already know where he's going in the movie.
I love Heat. I wanted it to be The Godfather. And it's a Michael Mann movie, which is nothing wrong with that either. It's a Michael Mann movie.
I like it more than The Godfather. Uh-oh.
Okay, well, you don't like movies. I'm just kidding. We did get a question about The Godfather today on Facebook.
We did, and I didn't fully investigate that. You had asked me a question about that?
If we've ever done The Godfather on the show.
Oh, we did The Godfather Part 2 in July of 2015. In fact, it was July 12th of 2015 that I watched it.
When did you join the podcast?
2013. Officially, it was in like when Wolverine came out. I came back and
I feel like we
assisted.
did like halfway did The Godfather over like a Thanksgiving weekend or something like that because we couldn't think of anything else to do it. And I knew The Godfather had played on like AMC all 3 years.
Oh, I think you might be right about that.
I don't know why I remember that.
We've
Journeys.
never-
Go ahead.
We just have never talked about 3. Like as a trilogy, we've not talked about them because I've never seen 3, and I definitely would have watched it had it been for this show.
At some point, I'm sure they'll all get revisited again because they're that good. Despite what Josh said.
I love to. It's excellent.
Journey's End.
Which one is this?
This is the
British
English
World
World
War
War I movie.
Yeah, this is good. It's a good trailer.
Yeah, nothing special to it.
Yeah, nothing special.
I'm not sure exactly why.
I posted it because it was new. That's pretty much the only reason why I chose it.
Not why we chose it, but more along the lines of at the end of the trailer, there's a lot of accolades on the screen saying how wonderful it is. I'd never heard of it until this particular trailer. I mean, Asa Butterfield is in it. There are a number of other names that you'd recognize as part of that cast. But it doesn't appear to set itself apart from anything else we've seen in a war film before. So it may be wonderful. It's just not looking different.
And Sean didn't want to post that ghost movie with Helen Mirren.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
I can't remember what it was called. Oh, you didn't see Before Saw?
No, I
they didn't
stepped into
show-
the theater at like
Oh.
5:05,
the
so it's
most
possible.
haunted building in the world.
It was funny.
It's about there's an idea that I think it's the Winchester family.
Winchester.
The gun family. The woman has a house that she never stopped building, and she was of the belief, and this is actually real.
Right.
She was actually of the belief that the ghosts of the people killed by Winchester rifles were wandering through her house, tormenting her over what her husband created.
I see.
That does not come across at all in the trailer. All that comes across in the trailer is ghosts jumping out of mirrors and shit.
Yeah, I missed that trailer. There was another trailer involving a haunted house of some sort, and it's produced by James Wan.
That's Insidious, isn't
That's
it?
Insidious, the key thing
Right.
or whatever. But no, I was confusing that in my head. It was like a fall asleep Netflix situation. I was trying mixing the two trailer ideas.
We have a Lin Shaye appearance later in the show.
Oh
Did you watch it? No, you didn't see it, did you?
no,
It was rather hidden.
Oh wait, I did see that. Okay, okay.
Jesus. 1987.
Stay tuned.
Ticket prices surge, or what is it called?
Surge pricing.
Yeah.
Was this an idea that Uber came up with first? That
Well, I think it's been around for maybe
has it
Uber
been around
called
for
it
a while?
that.
They took advantage of it for sure, and kind of made it a thing where people kind of learned what surge pricing was all about. Basically, their idea was that they were going to pull cars off the road to raise the price of a ride on nights where they knew people were going to be out, and that was called surge pricing, and it was basically just cheating.
Right. And there is a way to do this right. You know, the supply and demand version of it. And it could also cause lower prices too. You get more art house movies in here for cheaper.
The idea would be that you'd pay like $50 to go see Thor if you go that night.
That's stupid.
And it's nearly sold out.
That's dumb. That wouldn't work, and it wouldn't. But if you did, and that was the idea, the example they use, I think that's poor. But I think if it actually made certain movies go down in price and others go up, I mean, sure, people are going to pay more to see Star Wars in the theater. You're not going to keep them out of the theater, make them pay $20 instead of 10 or whatever. But then for $5, bring in these A24 movies. If you're doing something like that to get more people into the theater, you know what I'm saying?
Doesn't it even itself out then?
Right.
And thus it'll readjust. I think it's a poor idea because I think it will even itself out. Not that I don't understand the laws of supply and demand. Even as a borderline socialist that I am myself, I find myself often hoping things just stay the same or go down and whatnot. I just see this as like another dig to get me out of the theater. There's just been a lot of new developments over the past few years. The Davenport Theater around here assigning seats for all theaters and whatnot really pisses me off. And then there's surge pricing. Well, what else are you going to do to keep me away from you? I mean, I could spend all week watching Stranger Things at home, and I'm cool with that. I don't need to be at your theater. And this comes at a time where we've just gotten our movie passes and, we're able to see more.
I'm wondering if this is a reaction against Movie Pass,
Probably.
like to stick it to them a little bit for what they're doing.
But the theaters have to associate themselves with that. They don't have to accept Movie Pass, do they not? So no. I think Movie Pass to me is the step in the right direction. Okay, even at its previous price was a step in the right direction because it gets you in the door more, and thus you're going to be spending the things that they make a lot of their money on, which is the concessions and ancillary things. I'm just confused by this whole idea. And if they're going to start it in January, it's a bad time to start it. That's what this article says. How are we going to discern a blockbuster from another type of film? Geostorm is a blockbuster, right?
Yeah,
it has $100 million budget. So are you going to charge me more to see Gerard Butler in Geostorm? And then you're going to charge me... I don't think it'll be cheaper to see something like an A24 movie. I think they'll just charge what they charge now for that, and then they'll just charge more for Thor Ragnarok, in theory.
And that won't work. If you do it where if you're trying to get more people into the seats, there's a way to make it work. Because people are going to go see Thor regardless. They're going to go see... They might not go for $50 a ticket, but they maybe will go for 15, maybe 20. But once you start going out and that, you're not going to get everybody out to the theater like you
imagine walking into the theater and there's an auctioneer there going, I got 2 tickets right down front here. 10, 15, I got 20, I got 25, I got 30, who gets 30?
And when you've got a thought there that can go beyond that. When do you establish that pricing? I mean, is it you release tickets like they did for Thor Ragnarok a couple weeks ago, or for Justice League is available now in advance of the film? Do you establish that pricing then? And then as the film gets closer and like reviews are terrible in advance of the film, do you say, oh crap, we need people to get in here? All of a sudden we lower them. And then how do you deal with the retroactive situation of I've already paid for my tickets? I think it becomes a mess.
You start buying your movie tickets on StubHub.
Did you see that story about the guy who got $9 World Series tickets?
No.
Via StubHub? Yeah. $9 World Series tickets via StubHub.
On accident?
I don't know, some kind of glitch or something. I don't know if it was a glitch or what, but somehow, he paid $9 for his World Series tickets.
I'd even go see the Astros Dodgers for $9.
Yeah, I mean, it's an. I think Josh is right. They're not going to do it right. They're going to do it one-sided and more or less just raise prices.
I'll only go to that if somebody throws at Yuli Gurriel. That's it. That's the only reason I'll go.
There you go. I like that. But
I'm rooting for the Dodgers. I don't know why. They beat the Cubs.
Me too.
Thank you.
Being my age, it's just not to go off on too much of a World Series tangent, but it's just weird to see the Astros versus the Dodgers. That's not a World Series game. They're both national.
Yeah, it's a National League West game.
Yeah, and the Dodgers are from Brooklyn. I mean,
I'm not that old.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service. Yes, this is Miles Teller as an Iraq War veteran set in 2007, and this is not a war movie. I know people seem to think that this is a war movie. This is a PTSD movie. This is about soldiers coming back from Iraq and dealing with PTSD and making people realize that there's no one way to have PTSD. There are multiple different ways to have it. That's what makes it so difficult to deal with, is that each of these guys has their own version of it. Something happens to them that creates a PTSD-like situation where they may have some symptoms that are similar, but they each have their own set of things to deal with, and that's what makes this so hard for people who are trying to put this in a box and figure out one single treatment for it. Because there is no one single way to deal with each of these guys, and that's what's so valuable about this film. Miles Teller continues to get better and better each time out. I was really surprised. I thought maybe with those times he was getting in the newspaper and the tabloid shit that he was getting into, I thought maybe he's going to go the way of Shia LaBeouf and maybe get too weird. But he's really put himself in these 2 roles in a row now, 2 weeks in a row, where he's done just exceptional work. He is so believable. He's got this amazing face where he's both a man and a boy. He's both sympathetic and kind of a douche, and it's fascinating to watch. He comes off as so real in both of these performances. I think Only the Brave is a better performance. It's at least a more moving performance, but this one is so identifiable. He's such a guy that you know. I really loved that. The whole cast is really good, and the way that they set up 3 separate characters in their own ways of having PTSD and trying to get help and going through the VA, and the way that the VA and the bureaucracy that we've created supposedly to help veterans is oftentimes contributing to their PTSD as much as it's supposed to help, or more than it's supposed to help. And that again makes this movie that much more valuable. I don't want to make it seem like a public service announcement, but it does have that element to it where it's actually more valuable in its message than it is actually as a movie. Which as a movie, it is kind of perfunctory. There's the direction doesn't really stand out, but the emotion is there and the characters are there. And for that, I can say that this is by far the best movie of this weekend.
Not saying a whole lot, though. It is. You do have a good point, though. Miles Teller really is both sympathetic and douchey at the same time, or one or the other. He does, that's kind of a good trait for an actor to have, at least at his age.
Few actors can pull that off.
He doesn't have necessarily the matinee idol good looks of other young actors, and I think that's partially the reason that he can pull that off, is we are identifying with him as more of an everyman that can occasionally be a bro.
If he were like a little more thick, a little more muscular, people might be willing to go with the De Niro comparison on him. That's the level of, that's how good he can be.
Suburbicon.
Hey, George Clooney, why don't you let the Coen brothers be in the Coen brothers and you can go just be yourself? This trailer was such a... I mean, they didn't let the people who made this trailer watch the movie. Clearly. They just here's a couple scenes, slap them together, and you decide what you think the movie is.
Well, and then, by the way, we're going to tell you how the movie ends 20 minutes before it ends because of something in the trailer. Not that would have made this any better.
Right.
But
yeah, the sandwich is pretty obvious.
Spoiler alert. Sorry, Josh.
You wouldn't want to see this anyway.
Trust me.
It's not any good. This supposedly, the trailer makes you think this is some kind of sci-fi comedy or something. Because I think sci-fi when I think Suburbicon. I thought, that's not the name of a town. That's the name of some kind of weird 50s experiment.
Right, like Pleasantville.
Right. Pleasantville's actually a more believable town name than Suburbicon, and yet that's what we're supposed to believe. It's just a town in the 1950s, and it's a rather straight-ahead story about a guy in the 1950s, and there's nothing really weird about it. It's just, here's this douchebag who's borrowed money from the mob. He's into the mob for money. He also wants to hire these guys to kill his wife so he can be with her twin sister, which that's the whole joke, is that she's her twin. And I guess that was meant to be funny, but it doesn't get a laugh. I'm not sure.
Because they were trying to make it they were trying to not let you figure any of that out.
Right.
They weren't being straight ahead with any of that. It was all supposed to be a twist, because at the same time all this is happening, there's an African-American family that moves into the neighborhood, and everybody's going ape shit over this. They're building up walls, and they're yelling shit at them 24/7, while next door there's all this horrible shit going on, which they're blaming on the African American family for moving it.
Right. Which it's the African American family is an entirely different movie. Like
Right.
it's an entirely different movie that's only basically part of this movie via editing. That's really the only way they're tied together. And I know that there's some point they were trying to make that symbolic of something else that's going on in the Damon story, but they never make the connection. It never finally comes together. This is supposed to be like a satire, like how stupid are these people for blaming these black people for what's happening when it's clearly just Matt Damon. By the way, spoiler alert, he's the villain in the movie. I know the trailer doesn't give you any indication of that. He's a villain. He's a straight up villain in this movie. And he's not even the center. This movie has no center. There's nothing propelling the story forward. Because he's a shitty guy. And
He doesn't even pop up till 15, 20 minutes in.
Yeah, the kid is kind of the center. He's the
But
only
they keep
character.
moving away from him.
Right. But he's the only character who has an arc in the movie.
Right.
Witnessing this notion of family destroyed before his eyes when he sees that his father is unwilling to identify the men who killed his mother. He realizes his dad is actually a shitty person. And then he goes on this arc of kind of uncovering more about how his idyllic suburban life is not really what it seemed. But he is so passive as a character, not to blame the actor, but the character is built so passively that he has no agency. He doesn't propel the plot forward, and really no one does. Then Oscar Isaac shows up and takes over the entire movie for about 10 or 15 minutes before he's gone. And I'm like, come back. You're the only interesting thing in this movie. Come back.
Yeah, it's just a mess. And they put the most amount of effort into this twist, which Sean totally gave away when he first started talking.
I don't care.
But they should have never even bothered with the twist. From the get-go, you should have known all this, you know? And even then, I don't know if you could have saved it, but you got to start there and then build around properly and make your metaphor or whatever because it's obviously so thick you know what they're doing, but they never do it artfully at all. I mean, there's no connection, like Sean said. So I don't know. It's just,
and there's no comedy. I don't understand why they allowed this trailer to go out and make people think this is a dark comedy. There's nothing funny about this. Everybody is playing this completely straight. Even that scene, I mean, you see in the trailer, everybody in the theater seemed to laugh at the idea of Matt Damon on that tiny little bicycle riding away. Like you think, okay, that this is comedy, but then you watch it in the context of the film, it's not funny. There's nothing funny about it because they horrify you moments before that. Is a gory horror scene of a car crash, and that kind of takes the comedy out of that moment that's supposed to, in the trailer, is a big laugh.
it definitely is. They are kind of Coen brother characters in just a thing, not even a movie. I wouldn't call it a movie, but they're definitely weird, what should be funny characters that never do funnier. I mean, the funniest part of the movie is the beginning where they keep showing the white people pop up from there. This is I don't even know what they were doing. I can't even remember, but it just is a very white town. Is
right.
Basically the joke, and I guess you get a little chuckle out of that. But that was the extent of the comedy.
Mm. There are a number of films that George Clooney has directed now. He's got a nice handful of stuff. I think Money Monster, and then there's The Monuments Men, Good Night and Good Luck, and then this. And it seems like he misses the mark as a director more often than he does as an actor. And I wonder why that is. It's like if you're George Clooney, what is it about a script that makes you want to make a movie? I mean, does he have he's got a lot of talent. Like Good Night and Good Luck is an amazing film. I don't see flaws with that one like I did with The Monuments Men, which was a mess. And Confessions of a Dangerous Mind comes to my mind too. That could have been really good. You've got a lot of great principles involved in that and a very interesting story, but that movie was a mess too. And that sounds like what this is as well.
And I can't blame any of the actors. I thought the acting was fine. It's just,
Damon, I mean, he has a speech at the end that is really good in another movie that, like, it was the Departed level good. Like, he was really nailing it in that moment. But the rest of the movie, his character is so held back. I mean, he's off screen sometimes, and he's rarely ever the center of a scene.
yeah. And this character in a Coen brother directed movie could be amazing. He reminds me of Corey from IVNV. Because he has a lot of the same. He looks not the character, the way he looks and his mannerisms.
Okay, sure.
A little less Golden Girls, a little more Something Despicable. But he kind of looks like him, and the mannerisms are similar. It's almost like he's followed Corey around for a week. And I told him this, and he's like, I guess I can see it. And I hope that's not an insult, because it's not like, Matt Damon's a good-looking guy, so I don't mean that in a bad way. But I just wanted to get that Golden Girls thing in there, because he's doing a Golden Girls podcast. We're not laughing at him. He's
probably
got
love
more
that show.
downloads.
I'm sure
than
he
us.
probably does. Just the concept makes me laugh. My cousin's going to listen to that.
I'm going to listen to it. I love that show.
Called Let Them Eat Cheesecake. It's out now. But yeah, don't go see Suburbicon. It's a disappointment. Big time.
Oh,
Jigsaw. We haven't talked about this. What?
Do you want to do the top 5 of Clooney?
Yeah, let's do the top 5 of Clooney. Thank you, Josh.
Put your top 5. Who's your top 5?
We only got one submission outside of ours, and that's from Cousin Jeff. He had Ocean's 11, Out of Sight, Up in the Air, Three Kings, and South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. I had, in no particular order, Three Kings, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, South Park, Hail Caesar, Up in the Air, and I don't know, Gravity or The Men Who Stare at Ghosts. I don't really, you could really interchange like 8 movies, and I haven't seen Out of Sight, so I can't put that in there. Josh?
Catty corner to that. Out of Sight is really the movie that made me fall in love with George Clooney. 1996, 97, him being on ER and then being in Batman and Robin and The Peacemaker in that particular year. Wow. A girl that I was dating at the time was obsessed with George Clooney too, and so I'm like, I hate this guy because all he does is make me feel miserable. And then I saw Out of Sight, and I'm like, oh, this guy is suave as shit. I like him very much. That's my kind of actor right there. Needless to say, that makes it onto my list. 5, Three Kings, 4, Solaris, 3, Out of Sight, 2, Gravity, and number 1 is The Descendants.
And I forgot that one. That's obviously one that could be interchanged with anything I put in there as well.
yeah, I like The Descendants a lot. It's my number 5 because it's kind of a deconstruction of George Clooney, which I thought is really a really interesting way to play him. And Gravity, just because that movie is so incredibly well made. Solaris, which is I thought vastly underrated, is his take on Solaris. Number 2, Up in the Air, which I love that movie so much. And number 1 is Three Kings, which is I think for me the best Clooney.
Yeah.
It's particularly underwhelming, our response for Clooney, and the reason I say that is I like him so much that I'd say like a top 5 actor for me right now. But and I realized going through his filmography, man, he's got a lot of crap that I really, really like. Maybe more on the level of the amount of Jack Nicholson movies that I like. That's what I'm getting at, right? But he then makes stuff like Suburbicon and Monuments Men that's not even close to the stuff that I really like of his.
And I'm not, like, with Suburbicon and in Monuments Men, both those movies, I'm just kind of whatever. It's not like I'm going to, there's no need to hate them or whatever. Just kind of like, nope, you missed, and kind
Just
of move
extremely
on.
disappointing, I guess, is what I would get at for Monuments Men. That kind of feeling, walking away from a person that I have high
We're not
expectations
mad at you,
for.
George. We're just disappointed.
Yes.
But then we go to IMDb and we're like, he's really good.
Yeah.
Even like From Dusk Till Dawn, that's kind of the movie where I got into him, and not the greatest movie in the world, but he was good in it for a while. And
Intolerable Cruelty is vastly underrated as well.
That would have been my girlfriend's favorite Clooney movie, and I just looked at her and said, "What?" Because I hated it so much. Another Coen Brothers movie, but
I haven't seen that one.
I liked it a lot.
All right. Jigsaw. We already talked about it once.
So bummed about Jigsaw. They totally screwed it up. Because Jigsaw's not the hero, guys. So there's the Jigsaw murders have apparently started up again. A detective played by Callum Keith Rennie is assigned the case after his informant becomes the first victim that we see. He sets off a thing that supposedly sets off a trap in a farmhouse where 5 people have buckets on their heads that are being drawn towards saw blades. They have to give an offering of blood in order to stop the saw blades, which, that's okay. That's not bad. That's kind of a Jigsaw thing to do. That made sense, but from there, as the story evolves, we find out that the movie is cheating in its time frame, and that this is a movie that basically tries to undo everything that Saw 3D, in my mind, did so well, which is remind people that Jigsaw's not a hero. That if you deify him, you need to understand what you're deifying. This movie treats him like a hero, like a dad. It's Jigsaw Dad, which is just such a shitty idea. He's not a dad. He's a bad guy. He's a murderer. I know he sells you on the idea that he's not a murderer because he's never really killed anybody, but Charles Manson never really killed anybody either, but he's definitely a killer. It's just... I'm so angry at this movie because the Spirit Brothers just don't get this character. They don't understand it, and it reminds me of all those late period Chainsaw remake or the late period Chainsaw remakes, the Freddy stuff especially, where they started saying they started acting like Freddy was the star of the movie. Jigsaw may have been the center of the film, but he's not the star. You don't identify with him. He's the bad guy. He just happens to have some ideas that are tantalizing. In spirit, he's a lot like, for me, when I think of this movie, when I think of Jigsaw, I kind of think a little bit of Tom Ripley, the character that Matt Damon played in Talented Miss Ripley. He's a bad guy who murders people, but by the end of that movie, I was so upset with myself because I was rooting for him to get away because he was such a great character. And in many ways, I don't root for Jigsaw to get away, but I understand him on a level that disturbs me, and I like that. I like that it makes me think about my morality. I like that it makes me think about myself as a person. Horror films don't do that. And this series, all the first 7 films, do that. They put you in a place where you're forced to confront the ideas of Jigsaw, and you're forced to confront the idea of what revenge means, and decide for yourself where you come down on that. And I like that a horror film can be that challenging. And this movie undoes all that. It just makes me so mad.
Yeah. Save for a couple of cool gore moments and whatnot. I can't say that I grabbed onto anything with this. And
let's leave the joke for the Saw podcast. You have to tune in to get the good joke.
That's why I say gore moments. And then there's a particular trick involved with this film that I won't give away on this one. Go to the Saw show for that as well, that I was left feeling very upset about and then wondering if the film would come back from it, and I don't think it really does. Therefore, to see a new incarnation of the 7 years after the franchise supposedly ended with the final chapter, I mean, like we ever believed that anyways, but to see it reincarnated, there's no brand new type of idea that's coming on board. There's no tie-in to the previous one other than Jigsaw's involved, okay, in some way, shape, or form. In whatever happened with Saw 7 at the end of that, it's not like that's involved with this film either. It isn't escalating at all. It's the same type of idea. If they've got ideas for a trilogy of films again or to keep going, fine, and they clearly have made some money on this one already, and they'll continue to, and therefore we'll see additional movies. But there's nothing this particular new movie adds to me. Luckily, it's not like I spent a bunch of money on it or anything like that. I just got your basic ticket.
You did, Patreon supporters.
Yes. So thank you for allowing me to say these words.
I think part of my disappointment too is I'm probably more angry at this movie just because of the time that I have invested in defending this series. Because I spent a lot of time to people defending this series because I do think the series is so much better than so much other horror out there.
Yeah, because critically, it's technically on Rotten Tomatoes. It's rotten.
Right.
All of them. All 8 of them.
I mean, it's natural, though, for highbrow critics to dismiss horror films in general.
Yeah, and as we talk about on the bonus podcast, I like how at least the first 7 do all tie together kind of even better than Avenger movies do in a lot of ways without make you wondering why isn't this guy here and vice versa and whatnot. But yeah, this one is just the fact that it cheats bothers me more than anything else. But then Sean's right. That's he's now Freddy and you're rooting for Freddy and you're not supposed to do that. And then it just it turns into something else. And really, when you start changing writers, and I guess as much as I dislike the guys who wrote 4 through 7, they were the same people, so they kind of kept the same flow going. Now you got new guys coming in, and they just lost it. Anything else on Jigsaw?
I don't ever have to see another Saw film again.
Until the next one.
Nope, I don't have to see that one either. I've made a choice.
We're going to do this all over again.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized, undisputed classic.
More Saw. The original Saw is our classic.
Right.
Just because we had to watch literally 8 Saw movies this week, and there's no way I could have done a classic with it. I literally spent every free ounce of time I had.
Desensitizing yourself to violence.
Yeah, I mean, right now, maybe it'll go away in a week, but I don't think anything can shock me at the moment. But yeah, Saw, as I've mentioned before on the podcast, it's one of my best theatrical experiences, being in a crowded theater, totally packed, with just people who would not shut up, laughing out loud. The acting seemed horrible. This movie was ruined. I was hating every second of it. And then the ending, when Jigsaw stands up, everybody in the audience just shut up and got kind of creeped out, and it just ended up being really, really cool. And I've told that story a billion times on the podcast, but that's kind of what I took away from this movie the first time I saw it.
I like this movie a lot. It's not my favorite of the Saw franchise. I like number 3 and number 6 more. But I like the foundation that this movie builds with the ideas of Jigsaw. And he gives these guys a chance to get out of this situation. He doesn't, like he says throughout the series, he doesn't kill anybody. They kill themselves. These two characters have the chance to survive this. So they just, unless they decide to be selfish and screw themselves over. I like the way that proceeds. I like the way it builds to the big moment at the end when Cary Elwes makes that decision. And I love the way the music swells. And I like the scoring of that moment when it's really building a lot of momentum towards him making that decision to cut off his own leg and crawl away. I thought that was pretty great. Pretty great way to build a movie. There are low budget aspects of it. There are things about it that don't work, but I thought aesthetically this is a very solid film, very well directed. James Wan is a heck of a director. If I don't like the Conjuring movies, it's only because I don't like ghost movies that fail to explain themselves. So I like this movie just because it is a gritty human story. I mean, there's nothing supernatural about this situation. There's nothing outre about it. This is a real life life and death situation that these characters are in, and they've got to make intellectual choices in a very unusual situation.
Everyone that's heard me talk about Saw before, I have a negative connotation involved with it, and of course, then the first one is really where it started, and I didn't bother myself with any of the sequels after seeing the first one. It's definitely not a classic to me, but I don't think that there would have been a way for me to see it that way. I do have to recognize its influence, though. When we talk about a film being an undisputed classic, we often see how does that influence film going forward, and it clearly has. I mean, there's so many torture porn horror films.
Torture porn. This and Hostel, and this one more so, I think. But yeah,
that's basically what it is, and I enjoy the cinematic nature of the way that this film looks more than any other Saw film. It seriously seems like a movie, and even though there are people that I'm not crazy about cast in the movie, such as Cary Elwes, Lee Winnell is in Monica Potter, I don't like any of them, but at the same time, it's better than anything else that the franchise offers, so I have to at least give it that kind of credit. I do recognize it for what it is, but I definitely don't like it, and I don't ever have to see it again.
I do react against the idea that this is torture porn. I know that it gets lumped into that notion, but this is the torture in this movie matters. Like it matters to the plot. It's purposeful, and I think when it comes to torture porn, like movies like Hostel or Wolf Creek or High Voltage, I think those movies are just about showing torture. I think you can sense the director masturbating behind the screen, enjoying watching these people being tortured. Whereas I don't think James Wan is sadistic, or Lee Wanell. I think they have brilliant imaginations for terror, but at the same time, I don't think that they identify with or enjoy the torture, and I think that is a very important distinction.
I mean, I don't know. It's still there's similar scenes to the movie scenes in Hostel and Wolf Creek. Just because they're not good movies, don't mean they don't matter to the plots. They're just not as good of a plot. So, I mean, it's one of the. I mean, clearly torture porn started just going nuts after this. So, I mean, at some point it started somewhere. So maybe it's better than most, but it does get lumped in there. And I don't know. Basically, it's just a title we gave something. So, and it's stupid to put genres on things. They should just be horror. But I
just think it's lazily applied to this so people can dismiss it easier.
Well, I think the title torture porn in general, it's like nu metal. When that came out, all these bands are throwing in there. They're a little bit different. It wasn't fair to do that. So I think the title all together is lazy.
It's like lumping everything in with indie as well. I understand. Absolutely.
Yeah. But it definitely is influential, for better or worse.
The title of the film. And, okay, so there's saws involved. But he also often, Jigsaw will say, see what, he wants you to see what he sees. So is it like a double meaning? Like, I saw that, or there are saws involved. His name is Jigsaw because he cuts jigsaw piece puzzles out of people.
Meaning.
Ooh, triple entendre. Blah, blah, blah. Dun, dun, dun.
I think Saw is just such a visceral title that to go with this type of horror. It just encapsulates it so quickly in one word. I think that's really what it is. Plus, of course, the plot of the first one does center on whether or not he'll saw off his own leg.
Mm. And while I'll take probably Halloween as a standalone movie or Nightmare on Elm Street and certain horror movies that are as standalones, as a franchise, I think this one fucks up the least. I think if we had to watch all of Friday the 13th, you're just watching these random bullshit. There's nothing... they're turning him into a zombie. This one does a good job of at least trying to keep it together. And to Josh's point, I think if I wasn't getting so invested in things going on, I would maybe step back and start to see flaws more. Blair Witch Project's another one that comes to mind. I'm so caught up in the movie where I don't care that it's a handheld VHS. And
I'm much more caught up in the ideas of this movie than I am in the aesthetic. Like
right.
I can acknowledge that maybe some of these aren't very well directed or very, very well made in terms of just their aesthetic, but in terms of there's other aspects of it that really do work. I think just being a horror film with an idea, because I really the genre is so often just associated with just ugliness that at least if you're going to be ugly, have an idea behind it. That's what I really identify with this series. That at least somebody's thinking this time. At least somebody's challenging the audience instead of, when it comes to the late period Friday the 13th movies or the late period Halloween movies, it's just about creating awful characters that you can enjoy watching die. And that to me is the ultimate ugliness of humanity right there. It's just if you can sit there and you're being told by a director it's okay to enjoy watching these people die because they're douchebags, you're a shitty person. If you enjoy that, you really are. You're just a shitty person. And I think I never enjoy watching any of these people in the Saw movies die. But I can understand the reasoning why Jigsaw, not necessarily that he enjoys it, but why he's doing it. And that being able to understand why he does what he does gives me a way into this movie that I don't have with those other movies.
I did get slightly excited about Jigsaw getting it. I got to admit that was pleasant.
I kind of, in part 6, enjoyed more than I probably should.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a shitty person.
Ray, this is 1987. Did you know that a girl can be whatever she wants to be?
I know. My mom's a plumber.
That explains a lot about you, Ray.
All right, Josh, you can pick the order.
Let's just get a couple out of the way that had odd titles and I didn't watch them. I only got to one of the 87 movies this week because there's a lot of other things to attend to. Amazing Grace and Chuck, and stars Jamie Lee Curtis and Gregory Peck, and it was directed by Mike Newell. Of Four Weddings and a Funeral and Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, very British-based director. And I haven't seen this. It only made $4 million, but the plot synopsis is interesting. Okay, so a Little League player named Chuck refuses to ever pitch again until nuclear weapons are disarmed. Basketball star Amazing Grace Smith follows the boys' example and starts a trend. Like... That sounds like an after-school special almost. But it's directed by Mike Newell, so it has to have a modicum of quality to it.
Why is my initial reaction to that to just want to tell the movie to go fuck itself?
I don't know.
It's weird. I'm a liberal.
Because you've been watching Saw.
That's not visceral enough for us. Also, Sammy and Rosie Get Laid, and I might ignore this if not for the fact that it was directed by Stephen Frears, one of my guys that I would probably watch anything he did because he directed High Fidelity. He directed Victoria and Abdul from a couple weeks ago that Sean talked about on the show here, amongst a number of other films. But this one says, and I'll summarize it here, Sammy and Rosie are an unconventional middle-class London married couple. Things become interesting when Sammy's father, Rafi, who is a former Indian government minister, comes to London for a visit. And they try and find meaning through their lives and loves. Of course, the title might be slightly misleading because if you go and try and watch a movie called Sammy and Rosie Get Laid, you might be expecting 1980s fun. And instead, you'd probably find an introspective Stephen Frears movie. Whoops. One of those times in life where you just get misled by a title.
That's how I got into movies to begin with, though.
Well, yeah. Just looking to see if it has SSC in the details.
Right.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you start watching real movies. This is pretty good.
Boy, that's a really good point. You discover some real gems late at night every once in a while. Also in 87, Gabby, A True Story, starring Liv Ullmann and Robert Loggia.
It's one of the worst movies ever made.
You know, it didn't interest me at all.
It's so bad.
It's about the life of Gabby Brimmer, a girl physically handicapped who finally gets her goals of study and triumph. That sounds immensely boring. No offense to the film. It might be wonderful for some, but I didn't see it. Okay, Fatal Beauty, starring Whoopi Goldberg. And Sam Elliott, of all people. And back in 1987, when Whoopi Goldberg was kind of a budding comedic star, I'm thinking of those HBO specials. Was it Comic Relief that I'm thinking of? That she was on, and Billy Crystal and Robin Williams and whatnot. And I got to watch some of those, or at least portions of some of those. And that was some really funny stuff every once in a while. They're trying to raise money for charity. And I'm wondering if that had something to do with Whoopi Goldberg becoming a star. Because there's Jumpin' Jack Flash, there's this one. There was one earlier this year. But Ghost is until 1990. But
it's still the area.
Yeah, you're right. This one, though, involves her being a police officer with a plethora of disguises. Have either of you seen Fatal Beauty?
I saw it years ago, when 88, when it was on 89, when it was on TV. But
okay. Slam Dance, a movie starring Tom Hulce. It barely made any money, and an artist framed for the murder of a woman is drawn into a web of corruption, blackmail, and deceit. Tom Hulce playing Amadeus, maybe that interests you in some way, shape, or form. The one that I did see this week, called The Hidden, starring Kyle MacLachlan, one of the most annoying actors of all time, and Michael Nouri. And how do I describe The Hidden? Because it's not good, but it has some parts to it that are like, ooh, that's really creepy, and ooh, that's really unintentionally funny. There's this alien, clearly an alien. The film opens in a chase scene, right? And somebody has just murdered people in a bank and plows through cop cars, gets burnt to a crisp, but is still alive. And on the brink of death, something crawls out of his mouth and into another person's body. And when that happened, it took me completely by surprise. I had no idea that it was coming. And it's a cool looking alien. Like, it's gross and everything, right? And it has like spider legs. And so I'm genuinely heightened in my tension level. And then Kyle MacLachlan steps on the screen and ruins everything. No, but you had a really good point, Sean. You must make it. What you said on Twitter about Kyle MacLachlan. I thought that was very funny.
Yes. Is when it comes to Kyle MacLachlan playing an alien, is it good casting or is it a little too on the nose?
Because he does, and he's the alien that's on Earth to get the one that keeps stepping into people's bodies. So this movie is like a cheesy 80s cop buddy movie involving Invasion of the Body Snatchers in a way. But the alien is really cool looking, and I have to admit I fell asleep for the last 10 minutes of this movie, so I don't know how it turned out.
I love this movie. It's so terrible. I love it so much. I couldn't stop tweeting about it when I was watching it. It was so silly. It's such a ridiculously silly movie. It's a giant alien slug, but it comes out of people's mouths and goes into other people, and it's awesome when it does it.
Yeah. I mean, it's got like some of the same type of creepy special effects quality of John Carpenter's The Thing. The beast that is in that movie, and it's spindles and tubes and teeth and grossness, that's all in this movie, albeit very slightly. Most of the time when the alien switches bodies, it's not on screen. It only happens the one time that I saw it, and I don't know what happens at the end of the film. Do we get to see Alien in full form battling other Alien? Because I was looking forward to that.
No, they just blow it up, I think.
Oh, with his special like sex toy weapon that he had. That should be the title of the podcast right there. Sex toy weapons. No, because then we'll drop that on iTunes even more.
But the thing about this movie, though, is that it is as silly as it is. It's not badly made. Like, no. I found the movie to be very. I kept waiting for it to get bad, like to be genuinely bad, but it's never really, to me, it never really was bad. Like, I was just enjoying it so much throughout. I kept waiting, like, this is going to be bad eventually, right? No, it's not bad at all, actually.
Yeah, how do you gotta like an alien that specifically steals Ferraris and listens to heavy metal music on high, and it just takes what it wants.
The ending is brilliant. I forgot to. The ending is. I'm re-looking at my Twitter now to see what I was writing about the movie at the time because I didn't get a chance to write a review of it. But it does. Yeah, it's the ending of this movie is absolutely freaking hysterical.
Oh.
It is just one of the best visually funny things. He like lights the senator on fire with a homemade flamethrower that you see earlier in the movie, and it's just this. It's awesome.
Oh, that homemade flamethrower.
Yeah.
That looked awesome.
It was awesome.
All right. I knew he was getting into this. The alien was going to get in the senator's body, too. That's clearly what happened when I roughly fell asleep. So.
Lynn Sher in that scene, and Danny Trejo has a cameo in
this
movie.
Yes, and he just gets blown away.
I love The Hidden. I love you, The Hidden.
Sounds like the best movie of the week.
Oh, so is.
Of the last 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, does the alien fall through the ice at the end?
Oh.
You probably have no idea what
Try. Let's not disrespect Only the Brave and Thank You for Your Service. Those are actually really good movies.
We'll pretend they didn't come out. All the movies, just not counting Miles Teller movies. Next week, A Bad Mom's Christmas and Thor Ragnarok.
I just missed an early screening of Bad Mom's Christmas this week. I'm so mad. They actually showed it on Tuesday. Randomly, and I just missed it.
Just missed it, or
I didn't not want to go. I just didn't know. They publicized it so poorly. I didn't get to go.
Yeah, I'll be at least one of those probably.
Which one? Let's get him on tape.
Yeah. Well, didn't you say your wife liked the original Bad Moms, right? And so do you find yourself also going to that one?
Most likely, she'll probably go see it with her friends. If I have time, I might go see it just because of the podcast, but it just depends on the amount of time I have.
And Thor Ragnarok is getting really, really stellar reviews and being put up there in line with something like Wonder Woman in terms of how good it is. And it just has so much positive vibe going for it. The trailers have been magnificent. The marketing for the film in general has been magnificent. So I'm really looking forward to it. And, you know, the only thing that I have thinking against that is that I was also really looking forward to Thor: The Dark World, because Thor's kind of like it's just not a character that you immediately think of when you think of the Avengers. You're immediately going to Iron Man or Captain America or whatnot. And I really liked the first Thor maybe more than I should have. And it should be fun.
It looks like they've changed tone, you know, for this one. And I mean, I guess if you're going to take all the Avenger movies, I'm going to say the worst two are the first two Thor movies for me. And that must be a consensus for the most part, because they are totally going with more of an Avengers type tone, almost Guardians tone to this movie.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking that you might actually see the Guardians in this movie.
Really?
Very seriously, in the end credits. I know nothing about this, in all honesty, but I do think that we will see the Guardians.
How many end credits are there, so I know how long
Not as many as Guardians of the Galaxy, most likely, because there were 5 end credit scenes in that.
Just quickly, I want to shout out a couple things that are on our Facebook page that you can check out, which is I wrote a review of a couple of independent films that are not big enough to be talked about on this show. There's Halloween, Pussy Trap, Kill Kill.
What do you mean that's not big enough to talk about on the show? Then why didn't you let me see this? Sounds amazing.
That shouldn't be a misleading title.
I'm sure it is. I read the review. It doesn't sound very good after reading the review.
And there's also Shortwave, which is another. They're both epically bizarre movies.
At least one that's a cool title.
Shortwave?
The other one.
Halloween, Pussy Trap, Kill Kill. That is an actual title.
I believe Sean called it kind of like the poor man's Saw.
Pretty much, yeah.
Without any direction. I don't remember how you worded it.
Well, the poor man saw. Whew.
Right. So, and then in 87, the only thing of real relevance, and I don't even know if it was Less Than Zero that I noticed.
Yeah, I'll be watching at least 2 of them, because one of my girlfriend's favorite movies is Made in Heaven, I think it's called, with Timothy Hutton. And that's going to be turning 30, so I'll be watching that as well. But
with Less Than Zero, Bret Easton Ellis, we're going to do American Psycho. And then just because rather than go the Thor, cast of Thor, top 5, which we could do, we're going to do cover songs used in movies. Because the whole soundtrack to Less Than Zero is all like the Bangles doing Paul and Simon and Garfunkel, and then Slayer does Iron Butterfly. And there's just a ton of, every band does a cover song.
So it's like I Am Sam, the Beatles were covered all throughout the soundtrack.
So, and
why do you have to remind me of I Am Sam?
I knew you didn't like it, so I mentioned it for that reason. Desired reaction achieved.
You know, I can't wait to see your reaction to him. Like, I want to hear about what you think of American Psycho, because it seems to have all the elements that you hate in a movie.
I own American Psycho.
It's got unlikable characters.
But it has Phil Collins. Waxing poetic about Phil Collins.
Saw had Phil Collins.
Yes.
Unbelievable. So the Godfather movies can't have unlikable characters, but American Psycho.
No, he doesn't like The Godfather.
I know.
Oh,
He's
gotcha,
upset that they don't have likable characters.
Michael's likable.
I'll try and update my feelings from my 1998 feelings, because it's been that long.
I've got him in a saw trap of a movie.
And then he's like, wait, why do I care? I can just walk away from this trap and be fine.
Right. Well, if Saw had a line saying, don't just stare at it, eat it, I would probably be on board with Saw, but we'll get to that next week.
It is kind of the opposite of Saw. Really, really well made. But I don't know. I don't find myself as invested in what he's doing.
I'm not invested, just hilarious.
But yeah, that's what's coming up next week. So think of your cover songs that are in movies. A lot of Beatle cover songs. Not just in I Am Sam, but other movies as well.
Stop saying I Am Sam. I'm going to have my own PTSD.
Sgt. Pepper's. You ever seen that movie? Possibly the worst movie ever made.
I like it more than I Am Sam.
Yeah, but I Am a Sam was kind of funny. That's so bad. One of the worst movies ever made.
God, I hate it so much.
But Dakota Fanning's good. I feel bad for her. You like it?
No.
Really?
No. It's been 16 years since I've seen it by myself in the theater.
No,
It was after.
I could see why someone would think they would like it in the first viewing.
As Thunder,
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder said so well.
You
Never go full
yeah,
retard.
Right. I knew what it was referencing as soon as he said it.
I gotta bleep that out. PC culture. But yeah, that's our show. I want to thank our Patreon supporters, our Key Grip, Charles Messing, our character actors, Josh and Matt Damon.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Oh, this Corey reminded me of. Our associate producer, Jason from New Mexico.
This is crazy. You want me to hit you?
That's right.
What, like in the face?
Surprise me.
And he kind of reminded me of one of the guys in Saw, the Jigsaw movie, Jason from New Mexico. Have you guys ever met him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Ryan? Is that what you're thinking of?
Was he the one who got his foot caught?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now he's going to watch and be pissed off.
Oh, no. I was just thinking, like, the look of him and perhaps the way he talked and stuff like that.
Right. Executive producer is Uncle Jeff.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
And our movie star, Dave Severs.
I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
If you want to be a Patreon supporter, head over to ihatecritics.net/Patreon to become a subscriber and supporter, and you'll get credit on the show, and you'll help us grow the show and whatever else that can happen from that. Is there anything else before we end the show? All right, we'll skip Flick Chart for the third week in a row because we've done 2 episodes, and I don't think Josh has eaten anything in 12 hours. So, again, I thank you, Josh, for watching all the Saw movie.
Of course.
That's why he hasn't eaten.
Right. I think he wants to. But otherwise, we will see you next week.
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
And we're the 3 best friends that anybody could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone can have. And we'll never, ever, 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 ever leave each other. We're the best 3 friends that anybody could have.